right. Welcome.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I am with Noah Bart, co-founder and chief operating officer of HappyPath. So, as an opening statement, what was your aha moment that got you to start HappyPath?
It was a combination of things. So, for a while, there's three co founders myself, Harry, and Eli, and we all work together in trading at multiple different firms. And we noticed specifically within trading that, this was like a problem. The solution came completely different, but the problem that we found was that we hired a bunch of these great engineers out of FANG, brilliant guys, way better than probably the classical finance engineers, but they knew nothing about finance. And so even though we wrote extensive product documents, we found that by the time it got to testing, the contextual understanding of what buttons should do and what the functionality of the platform should be was lost. It was just lost in translation. And that happens not only in finance, it happens in a lot of places. And so we ended up in this cycle, which we called release hell. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but yeah, we can bleep it out. And we were in that for a while and very much feeling it in different ways. Eli and myself were product managers. Harry was an engineer. So from Harry's perspective, it was writing, rewriting Selenium scripts. Selenium's a Python package. It's how most engineers will run automated tests, or a very common way. And then from our end, it was just like, we need to deliver this and we need to deliver it now. So the aha moment actually came late 2022, I want to say. So Harry, Eli, and myself, we were living together in an apartment in Chinatown. And Harry wakes me up at like 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. And this was before ChatGPT had launched. This was post GPT 3.0, but before 3.5. And he had essentially fed it a prompt and given it the ability, we call it agentic now, but to execute through the concept of buy me a pair of AirPods. And that was it. And at 3 a.m., very groggy, I looked at him and I was like, I'm going back to bed and I have absolutely no idea why you just brought this up to me, nor woke me up. But the next day he sat me down and he was like, think of all the issues we face on a day-to-day basis from my end, from your end, in testing. Prior to this, I was in implementation consulting, which will be relevant probably to later in our discussion. But through all of those phases, what if this was testing? You just gave it an objective, what you were trying to accomplish with the test, as many technical people would say, the requirements behind the test, and then it could go ahead and execute through your platform autonomously, essentially delivering you all the results of what it did so you could validate as a human. Really get rid of the time-consuming part, writing scripts, whether programmatic or natural language, and as well as executing those scripts. So that was the aha moment, was definitely him waking us up. It took us probably 4 or 5 months to really, I guess, make it more formidable. We wrote this combined Notion document, which we used to call the sauce. It eventually actually became our patent
Nice.
behind HappyPath, but that took quite a while. And then, we started with our goal is to solve testing for everyone. And as you can imagine, once we got funded, our goals became a lot more narrow and focused.
Right.
But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Now, HappyPath, it sounds very positive. What was your philosophy or vision, how you
Yeah,
got to
so
that name?
HappyPath testing is actually a thing, which thank God to the USPTO for passing our trademark without any issues. But HappyPath testing is kind of the concept of testing in the most efficient user journey. So there are no issues with the test. You're not, testing edge cases. You're testing the most direct thing. And it's really about creating what is the most efficient user journey. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of what we're trying to accomplish too. So we want to take those ideal conditions and really bring them in to testing. It's a little bit of wordplay, but it fuels behind our core philosophy, which is we need to remove the manual work. We need to make testing a lot smoother of a process. And as you can imagine, that leaves engineers and product managers in a much happier state. So I guess that's the positive twist.
Well, awesome. So next topic is let's dive into a little about objective based testing. Your objective
Yeah.
based testing, it actually really stands out. At least for me, it did when I did a bunch of research on you guys. For those of you who might be used to writing out everything, right? And then the A/B testing. What can you explain what that looks like in your practice? How does
Yeah.
a team go from we need to test to happy path, right? Is
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
just a long obtrusive hours they just get fed up with?
Ours is definitely what's bringing them to HappyPath, but I'll start kind of at the top of what's objective-based testing. So testing at a really high level software testing is a nice big word to throw around, and it covers a lot of stuff. If I had to break it down, I'm sure there's QA engineers in the world that would kill me for saying this, but I'd probably break it down to 3 areas, which is just you have functional testing, you have performance testing, and you have security testing. There's a lot of different types of testing existing, but HappyPath is really just focused on functional. We're not doing performance and security yet. Future things may change. Today, like you said, people are writing out everything. Now, maybe this is in Python, maybe this is done in natural language, which a lot of people are very familiar with, but you've got to write, what's the objective of the test, and then all the detailed, hit login, put in your first name. And so the idea of objective-based testing is don't write steps, just write what your goal is. What are you trying to accomplish? And sometimes it's as simple as just the name of the test. For example, create a customer. Almost every platform, we specifically specialize within ERPs, which I'm sure we can get into later. But in every major ERP platform, there is some kind of concept of creating a customer or creating a user, or an entity, I should say. And so with that today, you'd have to specify what the first name of the customer is, what the last name is, what the maybe work tag that may be associated with is. That is a very arduous process. So objective-based testing, how it works, is basically you'd feed into HappyPath, create a customer. And maybe you have some conditions to it. Create a customer and reject it. Maybe that's what you're trying to test. Maybe it's like create a customer and I want to have it specific certain values because I want to test certain workflows. But that's all you need. Objective-based testing, and that was actually a term we came up with, trying to continuously explain what we do, is just give us what the objective is. HappyPath will take care of the rest. It understands your platform and understands how to navigate through your platform as a human would. And so it pulls a lot of that work out, both in scripting and execution. And then what really takes people from we're looking to test and then to HappyPath. So today, I would say that testing, it really depends on who you're talking to. So for a large corporation, which is usually what HappyPath is focused on, is more larger enterprises, testing is kind of built into the process. It is the dark horse. No one wants to talk about it, but everyone knows that they inevitably have to do it. Specifically within our field in implementation services today, they have a process very similar to yours, where once they implement a platform for a client, they have to go through and actually test every single potential workflow of that platform. No, there's no flipping it. I mean, you can, it just won't go well at all, and a lot of your operations are going to go awry. And so today, it's like people in technology talk about agile versus waterfall. It's a very waterfall approach. Here is all of the requirements, client. Do you approve that? Yeah. Now let's go through, this is what all the test cases we think we need to test. Do you approve that? Okay. Now we're going to run all the basic tests, which we're going to call unit tests, and then we're going to run end-to-end tests. This process can take months. So what drives those clients to HappyPath is taking that process from months and bringing it down to days. And that's really what we focus on. But what drives anyone to testing is usually, okay, I built this platform and I know it's supposed to do X, Y, Z. Now I just need to make sure, can it actually do X, Y, Z? And so we won't ever change that. We're here to assist kind of after that point.
Excellent. Are there any common misconceptions people have that you've picked up on in your target audiences about automated testing that HappyPath either aims to solve or debunk?
Yeah. So I think that it depends definitely on the user group we're talking about. We'll stick to customers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, VCs, like a whole different story. But with customers, I think the biggest one is people have never seen this. This is incredibly novel. It is even novel for those that have been very focused in the AI space, that track companies, because the complexity of our agents is, obviously I'm kind of plugging ourselves and quite proud, but I would say it's significantly superior to things that exist on the market today. So the first thing that we always get is just this gap of understanding there's no pre-written script. When people usually see our demo and I'm walking through it with them, they assume these tests must have been programmatically created to be able to execute this efficiently. So a lot of the misconceptions that we have to debunk with our client base is this is agents. They're operating autonomously, and that gives you immense levels of flexibility as well as diversification of what happens during the actual test run. And usually once they get a grasp of that, there's that aha moment for our clients where they go from like, this is cool and I could see how it could save me time to, oh wow, like I don't have to do 85% of the work I used to do. And there's a ton of other benefits outside of actual test execution that we also support for implementation services.
Excellent. So the next topic, impact and target audience. You obviously have clearly focused on business and software teams. Who is your ideal company that you target and that services can really offer them a transformable outcome?
So with us being in the software testing space, just to kind of jump onto your previous question, a huge misconception is our end customer is software teams, like kind of the teams that I used to work with where we're building brand new software. So our platform can support them, but our real sweet spot is implementation consulting, like I was talking about earlier. So when you think about who are our primetime clients, it's the Accentures of the world, the Big Four, IBM, Gemini, these really large consulting firms that are going and working hand in hand with the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 to essentially implement large scale enterprise platforms. We're really focused on trying to just reduce that as much as possible. And inevitably we want to actually expand and grow and go past the implementation services space and be able to support, I guess I would call them active development teams, people who are actively developing. But today, and we can support them, but today our real, like the kind of game changer of HappyPath is the level of automation we provide in the universe of these ERPs.
Might be a little odd question, but I think it's worth asking.
Yeah.
Beyond the saving time part, how do you think your testing impacts the overall quality of the software?
So definitely, while not having to write scripts and not having to execute a huge plus, people often don't talk about the maintenance aspect of testing. So I almost would say like script maintenance is a silent killer because you go and especially for smaller teams, so that's not really our target, but you go and you build, I can speak to it because we are a small team. You build these script libraries and then you have to maintain them. Things change, your UI changes, your backend changes, and it's the constant maintenance of this. That same concept does still apply when you think of once an implementation services firm has implemented a platform, usually there's an agreement of some kind of managed services, meaning like that implementation services firm is maintaining the platform for the end client or end user.
I almost won't deliver, a designed fix for one of my customers unless there's not that ongoing maintenance service contract, because it could be working today, but there's so many variables and I wouldn't feel right selling the service if I didn't have that ongoing attention. Yeah.
And I think that is an incredibly relatable point to a lot of business owners or business managers. And so when you strip away the concept of steps and scripts and you bring it and boil it back up to objectives with objective-based testing or requirements, those usually don't change. For example, while your customer, I'm just going to go back to my previous example, while your customer creation flow may change as your business grows, changes, shrinks, whatever happens in the market, what doesn't change is the objective of trying to create that customer and whatever conditions you may have around it. And so with that, now maintaining becomes a lot easier because your test suite becomes a series of these objectives that you're trying to accomplish, and those don't actually change. And HappyPath is naturally self-healing, so it's going to adapt and adopt to changing UI, changing workflows, changing maybe conditions of any given test. So that's just like, we talked a lot about the saving time aspect, but this is going to just create higher quality releases, more confidence across development, QA, and customers, depending on what the setup is.
Yeah, great stuff. Next is security and trust. In the world of software development and a lot of other areas in business, security and data privacy are absolutely critical. How does HappyPath ensure the sensitive testing data is handled with the utmost care and compliance?
So we try to do our very best to maintain it. At the end of the day, we always will put that we believe our tools should be primarily used in UAT environments. So before you release out to production, you shouldn't be doing your testing primarily in production. And I would argue that that is just solid principles. Granted, monitoring and making sure that kind of aspect of testing, that should exist in production. For HappyPath, we tend to push towards UAT. Now, with that in mind, we grasp that there are a variety of different InfoSec requirements depending on the industry we're dealing with. We all came from banking, so we have a really strong grounding in that, and have just this wonderful CISO that's been advising us since we started. The way that we support that is basically offering flexible models. So if they want to go open source or they have a private, specific model they want to use, also a flexibility around hosting. Sometimes people want on-prem. Some people care a whole lot less. When you have to deal with the government, making sure that you're compliant with all the aspects, they want it airtight, and we grasp that. Swapping, luckily, we built very scalable infrastructure, so swapping those things out aren't very difficult for HappyPath, which allows us to support. If you think of any of our target clients, like an Accenture, for an example, they are dealing sometimes with clients who really care about InfoSec, sometimes with clients who care a whole lot less. So they need the ability to almost toggle that as they're using HappyPath, and that's the type of flexibility we provide. And there will be, a whole new level of that come the time when we expand out into Europe.
Right. Yeah, there's obviously different data privacy laws in Europe than here in the States.
Absolutely. And 2026 hopefully will be the year HappyPath GDPR compliant as well as ISO compliant.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Looking in the future, where do you see your business going out 2 years, 5 years? Where do you see the industry that you're in as a whole? Where's it going in the next 5 years, 10 years?
Well, I'll speak to us and then I'll get my points of view on the industry. So when it comes to HappyPath, I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, it's to fully expand. So, we started off and the beginning of our product has been really tailored towards Workday, very specific enterprise platform. We want, next step is expand out horizontally, basically attacking all the major enterprise platforms. So we have kind of a cohesive library that we can go out with. And then I would say kind of that 2 to 5 year range is then now taking the level of agentic automation that we've applied to these enterprise platforms and bringing it to the rest of the world. The complexities that exist in the kind of technological landscape of a RBS, for example, a very large bank, is just it's such a larger universe. So our goal, as it's been from day one, even though we've taken a very targeted approach so far, is let's get to that end universe. We want anyone to be able to pick up HappyPath, easily onboard, and it to very natively understand what it's looking at, understand platforms, maybe even creating tooling to help training in those initial few weeks, and eventually have it that you can really easily onboard no matter what you're building. So you don't need to just be implementing that. Today, we really just offer what I would say is like peer level automation, which is, there are visual ways you can create tests if you're not with an enterprise platform. There's a variety of different recording tools, etc. That's pretty common across the industry. And we wanted to at least provide that as a baseline if people would like to use us. When it comes to the enterprise platforms, that's really where things are going to get special, as I said earlier. So talking now more broader, our active development, what I would say our active development tooling that we have, I would say is on par with almost all of our competitors, whether that be something like an OpKey, a Tricentis, I'm trying to think through AppVance, etc., where we're giving the ability to create tests without needing to know how to code, be able to execute those tests, maintain them, have that testing library, have a workflow for executing tests. But as we look at the whole industry, they're all moving towards what we started with, which is essentially agentic testing.
Okay.
And the adoption of agents, I think, is fantastic because, well, number one, it validates that the idea we started with was actually a good idea. But number two is that when we started HappyPath, I had not heard of a single one of our competitors, and neither had any of us. And we had worked at probably a dozen firms, which means of the dozen firms, and not small firms, of the dozen firms we all worked at, none of them had used these platforms. And then there's a big question, why not? And this is totally my thesis. I almost want to say this isn't representative of HappyPath as a company, but I believe it's because it didn't solve enough of the problem. There's almost a threshold with any client base no matter what your tooling is, where you have to solve enough of a problem to actually get the leverage and the buy-in, where they say, okay, woo, this is going to save me a lot of time, not just a little bit of time. Now, I think agents are going to unlock that, which means more people will be using these tools, which means they'll become more commonplace. I think that's amazing. And I think that's the big win from our industry side. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Last two questions. This is,
Let's
I
hear
mean,
it.
this is great stuff, man. Um, Happy Path.
Yeah.
What do you feel you're doing well, and then what are you feeling you're struggling with as a company?
That's a really, really good question. So I think what we're doing really well is solving the actual problem. A lot of people struggle at our stage with product market fit. And with my experience in implementation consulting, another one of our founding team members' experience in implementation consulting, and an extensive amount of market research, which we were lucky to do with our networks, I do very much feel that we have truly solved this problem for this industry. And that is what we're doing well. Not only are we, previously I said we don't just support execution. When you think of this from an implementation standpoint, you go and you implement for your client. This rolls you into testing, but testing has multiple phases. It's creating your tests, it's executing your tests, then it's fixing them. And then the fourth one, which I think testing platforms today don't highlight enough because they're usually not targeting implementation consulting, is documentation. As implementation consultants, I need to produce status reports. I have audit requirements that I need to hand over to the client, showing them, here's every test, here's every interaction, this is everything we did, so you know your platform is tested. And lastly is job aids, being able to create effective change management documentation. I have personally spent so much time doing these things, from the status reports through the job aids, and we are automating all of that. So when you use HappyPath, right, you're going in, you're able to either import, if you have an existing test library, or automatically create test libraries with requirements. You can pass that through, easily assign to your team members, execute automatically. The review and the remediation is built natively in. So it's not like you're sitting there like, oh, I've got to go delete this test and restart over again. Edit and add assertions at every test step level. And then finally, when you're complete and all those tests are sitting and approved, no matter if it's at a test run or a project level, you can export and create all the documentation you need to support your entire project. And so I think that is what we do great, is we have found our niche and we are trying to dominate extensively within it. And where we struggle, well, I think where we struggle is probably where a lot of AI startups struggle right now. We were lucky we got a really early start on this, but you get two schools of thought. You have our clients who don't believe it's AI and must be scripted, and then we have to kind of explain it's agentic. And then you have the flip.
Because everyone thinks AI is this one box that fits all. They think it's Chat GPT, right?
Exactly.
And I had a client on a while back, and she goes, "Yeah, we're fully AI. We use Chat GPT every day."
I mean, this is so commonplace. And it really is. I think ChatGPT, first of all, just like, wow, OpenAI crushed it as a product.
Yeah.
It has given a sense of confidence to people about what LLMs can do and what can actually be achieved. And if you ever get the chance, one of my co-founders wrote this piece. I think Dracula's Paradox. It's like something about a silver bullet. And essentially the whole purpose of this piece, I should have probably remembered the name of it. Yeah, I'd be happy to. It is extraordinary because it calls out exactly what I think we're struggling with, but also everyone struggles with, which is you have to explain to people this is a huge upgrade, but this isn't the all-in-one solution. That building an AI platform requires an enormous, and we are AI, as I can say this confidently, we are as AI native as any other company out there, but it requires an enormous amount of supporting traditional code as well as really intelligent prompting and reprompting, criticizing, ensuring that there's a lot of stages of validation. Because if you don't do that, one of two things happen. Number one, it will solve it because the task you're asking is simple. Or number two, it's going to run off the rails and just go and do something completely different than you're asking it to do because you haven't built all those layers of necessary. I want to call it infrastructure. It's probably the wrong term, but just those layers of making sure that the agents are recursively checking themselves, that there are multiple layers of validation before it's going ahead and taking an action. In our case, it would be before it goes ahead and actually executes a step of the test. So I would say that is, what we struggle with is trying to balance the narrative, trying to educate. I think a lot of people who are really deep in the weeds like us, and thank God for people like you. It's tough. It's really tough to educate because you get two polar opposites. You have the people who think AI is a farce, and then people who think AI is a one-shot kind of kill for everything you want. And it's really, life's a gray area, and so it's important to try to, convince people of that without deterring the benefits it can bring.
Yeah, I think in our last conversation we had, I gave you the example of like my parents, right? And it's
Yeah.
going to be fast tracked in today's society because of AI. People
Yeah.
who just want to just keep pushing it away and want nothing to do with it, they're going to end up in a spot where they really don't want to be. So I'm not saying you got to be a pro, but you got to like try to understand it, right?
Yeah, you got to try to understand it,
In its
and
simplest
both in
form.
its benefits and it's where it caps out. Yeah.
All right, Noah, this is awesome content. I want to thank you. Get me the link to your associate's book. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, fantastic. Actually, I'm going to just post in the chat the link to the article so you have it. It was the Dracula paradox, silver bullets or garlic.
Okay.
And so it just talks about a lot of like our iterative approach, the things we've done great at, and a little bit of the things we failed, much more at a technical level than a business side.
This is
I'm
great
super
content,
excited.
man.
I
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you.